get let's get this party started. Okay, and as always, I am so thrilled that there are so many of you already in the room. I'm going to very quickly go down to chat because I need to be sure that everybody can talk with everyone. Let's see, panelists can chat with everyone and attendees can chat with everyone. So that means that what I would love is, first of all, if you would click on the little chat logo, the speech bubble at the bottom or the side of your screen, and let me know, first of all, if it's your first time on a happy hour. And those who have been with me in the past know that I also like to know what is in your glass. If you settle down, deep breath, with the beverage of your choice. Doesn't matter if it's a hot cup of tea, a glass of water, a bourbon, doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that we are here together for the next hour talking about plants and gardens and all of the life affirming things that we really need at this time of year, don't we? So many of you are first timers. Fantastic. Um, Sparkling water with a splash of lemon sounds great. Hot ginger tea sounds great. Chardonnay sounds great. Oh, and Jennifer tells me it's a great hairstyle. Here's the thing. About 4 times a year, I get my hair cut at Salon Raphael and Nina's by Ralph, right? And those times he blow dries my hair. It is the only 4 times a year that my hair gets blow dried. And he always tells me, oh, you can do this and blow dry it this way. And I say to him, Ralph, life is too short to spend time blow drying my hair. So you folks get to see how this looks when it's blown out, as the hairdressers say. But you probably will never see it again because it's only on the times that I go to the hairdresser. So many of you are here for the first time, and I think that that is wonderful. Now, know that a couple of things if you're here for the first time. This is being not only live on Facebook, but it is also being recorded. So if you have to jump out mid talk or whatever, know that you will have the option to both find it on the Hyannis Country Garden Facebook page in the future, and it will also be in 3 or 4 days up as a recording on the events page at Hyannis Country Garden. So that's the first thing to know, that it is being recorded that way. Second thing to know is if there is something that you want to remember immediately, get your phone and take a screenshot, right? Or take a screenshot of it on your iPad or however you are tuning in. So that is a good way to remember as well. And the second thing to remember is that I take questions after our talk, which will go on for about 25, 30, 35 minutes, right? After the main body of information that I want to be sure that you know is covered, then I come back to the chat window and I take your questions, and I don't care if it's about your house plants or hydrangeas. All right, whatever is on your plant mind, we will go through those questions. Should I not have time to take them all tonight before 6 o'clock, then I'll save that chat and I will answer those questions on the Hyannis Country Garden blog. So that is several things to note. Now, Linda, good for you. Linda says she's not sitting down with a beverage at this moment, but she did buy 2 of these orchids. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these orchids toward the end of our talk. So stay tuned for a little insider information about what is behind me on the Hyannis Country Garden patio right now. So let us get going. If a question occurs to you, you can type it in chat at any time. Know that there might be a little thing at the bottom of your screen that says raise hands. I don't answer questions during the presentation because that involves multitasking. And it is very difficult to speak, multitask, keep track of the technology and all of it at the same time. It's a little beyond me, particularly at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening. So type your questions into chat and we will get to them after the presentation. And now I am going to share my screen. Where is my share? Oh, share my screen. Okay. I am going to go to the keynote presentation. Let's share that. And I am going to play the slideshow. And here we are together in our January happy hour. And we're talking about our plants indoors. And it is a cold time of the year. Now, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about overwintering, plants that you may be overwintering, you may not be, but plants that are being overwintered at this point. I'm going to talk a little bit about houseplants. I'm going to talk about some winter fun. I've got a suggestion for you on days like today that it's not going above freezing. I've got some suggestions for you for some winter fun. And we will take your questions, no matter what they're about, at the end of the session. So let's start out with plants that you are overwintering, like annuals, tender perennials, herbs, those plants that you just couldn't bear to let die outside. And because it's cold out, right? This is what's going on out there right now. Now, I do overwinter several plants, and one of my criteria for what I save and what I don't is that if a plant gets bigger and better over time, if it's getting more spectacular, then of course I want to save it from year to year. And sometimes I save the fuchsia that is there on the left-hand side. That's a Gardenmeister fuchsia. We have those every year and every spring at Country Garden, and they're a pretty easy plant to save from year to year. But since that's a plant that doesn't necessarily get bigger and better over time, I don't always save it because I know I can buy it in the spring. All right. But that's Euphorbia sticks on fire. That's to the right of the fuchsia. That is a plant that isn't always available. And it gets bigger and better. And so I save that from year to year and I put it outside in the sunshine. It gets that coral color, which is where the common name sticks on fire come from. Some people call this a pencil cactus. Like many succulents, it is in the Euphorbia family, and which is a very diverse family, frankly. But this is a plant that, for me, it's worth jumping through those hoops of carrying what gets to be a fairly heavy pencil cactus inside and putting it in a sunny window. Other cacti are also worth saving, I think, from year to year. And I thought that this was a pretty brilliant window box. If you've got a window box that you forget to water, or a friend of mine, Pamela Phipps, for a while, she was planting a window box that was in a house that was being an Airbnb. And of course, she couldn't get in there to water when the clients who rented the Airbnb were there. And so she planted it with succulents and cacti. And that was brilliant because they could go for 2, even 3 weeks without water, no problem. And for this store, during the store's busy season, they weren't getting out there to water, number one. Number two, for them, it prevented all the tourists who were eating ice cream cones from leaning against their windows. And I thought that it was kind of a brilliant solution, right? But in the winter time, this window box comes inside on the other side of that window, so they can save all of these cacti from year to year. And from year to year, of course, they got bigger and better and more lovely. If you are overwintering succulents, you want them in a sunny window. You want to water them about every 10 days to 2 weeks. You can let the soil get dry, and you don't want to fertilize them in the winter. Those plants are resting at this point, okay? We have short days still, and most of our plants don't require fertilizer during short days. There are a couple of exceptions, which I'll talk about in a second. Now, maybe you've got geraniums indoors. Their common name is geraniums. We know them well. We love them. We use them in our mixed containers and window boxes. They are in the genus Pelargonium, and they are easy to save from year to year in front of a sunny window. You want to let them do their thing at this time of year. And this is true for most of the annuals that you might be growing inside in front of a window. You just let them alone at this time of year. You don't fertilize them. You water them when you need to, right? But then in March, right, or maybe late February, you can trim them back. You can start to fertilize so that you can have the mother plant growing back thick and full again. And what you trim off, you can root. So here is my variegated geranium in front of a southern facing window in my house. There's a couple of things that I'll tell you about this plant. Number one, it's got this branch that is not variegated. Sometimes a variegated plant will start to revert to all green. And if you like it for the fact that it's variegated, you want to take that all green piece off. So pretty soon I will cut that off. Now, I might root it, right? I might root it. It's probably got the same coral covered flowers that the variegated plant has. And I love the color coral. I love the flowers on this plant. So I might root a piece of that all green plant. But after I take away this all green shoot, I'm going to be cutting this plant in half, right about here where you see the cursor going back and forth there. I'm going to be cutting it off there. I will take 6 to 8 inch pieces and root those. I will be rooting them with rooting hormone in a seed starting mix. I won't be putting them in water. You can put geraniums right in water to root them. So that is a perfectly valid method for geraniums. I usually go straight for the rooting hormone and the pots with seed starting mix because then I don't have to think of them again. When they're in water, if a cutting is in water, you have to watch, you have to change the water so that the roots don't rot, the bacteria doesn't build up. And once it starts to get roots of, 3 or 4 inches long, then you need to pot them up. And for something like this that's inside, that occurs later in the spring when I'm busy with a lot of other things, which that's why I put them right in the seed starting mix. And that way they can be growing in this seed starter through the spring into the beginning of summer when I'm ready to pot those cuttings into other window boxes or containers. So I, at this time of year, do purchase some seed starter, not only for my seeds, but also because it holds moisture better than potting mix. And you can take a cutting of whatever you've got inside, whether it's a house plant, geranium, and you can put some rooting hormone powder on the base of that, put it right in some moist seed starter mix, put that cutting in a bright place, but not in direct sun, just someplace bright. So, 5 feet away from a sunny window, maybe, where it's a little bit bright, but not direct sun. And you keep it moist, and you can tell that it has started to root when it suddenly begins to grow. Then you know that it has rooted. And usually with something like a geranium, that takes about 3-4 weeks. All right. So if you do that in early March, by the end of March, early April, that cutting is starting to grow. You can pinch it to make it bushier if you want, and then it's ready to go outside later in May. Now, many of you may be overwintering herbs. And by the way, for those of you who have just joined us, I will be taking questions in chat. So if you have a question, you can type it in chat anytime, and I will be coming back and going from top to bottom with those questions and answering them. Herbs inside, okay? This is my poor bay tree. And I say poor bay tree, it's not that poor, frankly. It's got a good life. All right, but here it is in my garage in front of the door that faces east, so it only gets maybe 2 to 3 hours of sunlight a day. But that's okay because it's really semi-dormant. It's not actively growing. I may be watering it once every 4 to 6 weeks. And for a bay tree, this is ideal because it's cold. It's cool in my unheated garage. It ranges, around 50 degrees, maybe down on the coldest days outside to 45. That's perfect for this bay tree. It's not going to hurt it, number one. And number two, that means that this bay tree never gets scale, which is why I keep it inside. And of course, as I'm cooking, I can go out and cut a piece of that bay tree at any point as I need it for cooking. So here is a plant that I am overwintering in the garage. Now the rosemary and some other herbs I have growing inside. Rosemary is the main herb that I try to keep alive indoors. And I say try to keep alive because rosemary can be tricky. And here's how it can be tricky. Here are some hints for you. Number one, never mist this plant, okay? Because misting it makes it more prone to powdery mildew. So that's number one. Number two, it might have a little bit of dieback on a few branches. You see this? That's a little bit of dieback here, a little bit of dieback there. Maybe those shoots had a little powdery mildew. I don't know, but in any case, I'm going to clip them off. So if you see a little bit of dieback like that, don't let that stay on the plant. Clip that off fairly quickly. Number three, rosemary at this time of year is putting on new growth. And here it is, and it's kind of pale, lean, lanky growth. You might even see some signs of mite activity, a little bit of stippling on the leaves. Don't worry about the mite activity, but all of those pale growth on rosemary right now, clip them off. So right now I'm going to take the scissors out and I'm going to clip off all of this pale growth right here on this plant, right? And I'm going to use that in my cooking. So, clip it off and put it in the potatoes, put it on the fish or the meat or the chicken, whatever you are preparing for dinner. Even if you have takeout food, add some fresh herbs and it makes the takeout food 100% better, right? And you can just clip off those new leaves with the scissors, knowing that in doing that, you are going to have a bigger, bushier, healthier plant when you put it outside in the summertime. And I will be clipping off this new growth on my rosemary on, a weekly basis from now through April, and I will be putting this plant out in early May. This is an herb that can go out when it's still cool in the spring. You want it to be past a hard freeze, but usually we don't have a hard freeze after early May. So this is waiting to go outside in early May. Now, what if you have citrus inside, particularly flowering often at this time of year? If you have a citrus plant inside, you need to be the bee, all right? You need to pollinate your flowers with a soft paintbrush or a Q-tip in order to get fruit. And so as soon as those flowers come up, before these are looking a little bit old, these flowers, the pollen should be looking a little bit more polleny before I when I fertilize that. But I take a soft paintbrush or a Q-tip and I go and I put that around the stamens here that have the pollen, and then I brush it over the right here over the pistil, and I do that on this one. And guess what happens? This is what I get. New fruit that forms because I have pollinated those flowers. If your citrus blooms outside, you of course don't have to do that. Or if you have a greenhouse where you have insects buzzing around, you don't have to do that. But in most of our houses, you need to be the bee. Now, know this about overwintering some plants inside. Some of them decline as the winter goes on. Don't worry too much about that, all right? This is a variegated papyrus, excuse me, that I save from year to year because it's an unusual plant. It's one that I don't find frequently, all right? It's not often sold. And if you have a plant that, you know, one year we might have it at Country Garden and we might get it in from a grower and we will never see it again. And I have several plants that I have bought at the store that the growers don't do anymore. So, and you know, at Country Garden, we're a retail operation. We don't have any control over what the growers decide to do or what they don't do. So if you've got something that's a little unusual, save it over. But know that it may not be so gorgeous through the winter. And here is how my papyrus declines every winter. The pieces die back and they slowly die back. Doesn't matter that I'm keeping it well watered. It's just not a happy plant inside, but it is still alive. And so I will come in and I will clean up those dead pieces and take them off. And I will know that when I put this plant outside again at the end of May, and I give it some fertilizer at that time when it's outside and it's happy again because it's outside, it's going to come back to life and be full and bushy and gorgeous again and be the kind of plant that when a plant geek comes into my property, they will often say, "What is that? And can I have a piece?" Begonias. Begonias you can overwinter inside, and oftentimes they just steadily decline. This plant loses leaves on a weekly basis, all right? And so every week I have to go in and kind of clean up underneath it. And by the end of the winter, it looks like a begonia pretty pathetica. But not to worry, because when it goes outside again and I put it in dappled shade, and it is going to not only get full of foliage again, but it's also going to be flowering all summer long. So if you are saving begonias, don't worry if they get brown edges on their leaves. Don't worry if they seem to even die back completely. The tubers in the soil are probably still alive. If the plant is died back completely, don't keep it too wet. Tend to keep them a little on the dry side through the winter. They will be back come spring. Now, if you are overwintering tropical hibiscus, these also tend to start to decline at this time of year. Maybe they lose leaves. Be on the lookout for various insects, okay? Whether it's whitefly or aphids or whatever. Have some insecticidal soap or some neem or neem max. I'm a fan of neem max by Bonide for those sucking insects that houseplants get. Be prepared to spray them for that, but bear with them, all right? Let them do what they're going to do. Now, this is another plant that you will sometime in March cut back and start to fertilize at that time. Your citrus plants may be declining. They may be losing leaves. If the leaves are looking yellow and stippled, they probably have citrus mites, and you want to spray them with a miticide. We have a great organic miticide by Bonide in the store. But if you see leaves that are starting to get stippled and yellow, like that leaf there, you probably have citrus mites on your citrus inside. Again, don't stress about it. Spray them with a miticide, but know they're going to be better once you get them outside. Now, what you can do to help all your plants along right now is give them some earthworm castings. That helps the soil really stay alive for both houseplants and overwintering tropicals and citrus. And so you can put a couple tablespoons of earthworm castings. We've got it in the store, and put that on there now. Then plan on trimming them back and fertilizing them in March, all right? That in March, the days are longer, those plants are starting to grow again. Plants are going to recover very quickly when you put them back outside in May. Now let's talk about plants that are in your basement or your garage. I've got all kinds of things in my garage, along with everything else in my garage. We've got agapanthus, we've got hydrangeas in pots, we've got random plants that I thought, oh, let's just see if this lives. And I stick it in the garage. And if you've got plants in your garage or basement, let's talk a little bit about those. Here's the center of my garage right now. I've got hydrangeas and fig trees in the center of the garage. We've got to kind of duck around this is the big fig tree here. We've got to duck around it when we get in our cars, but it's worth it. It is worth it. If you have plants in this sort of situation, they don't have leaves, most of them, right? They're dormant. And being dormant, they don't need water all that often. Check them every week. Feel the soil. If it still feels wet or moist, don't water them because they're not going to be using a lot of water. But if it starts to feel dry on the top, then give them some water so the roots don't dry up. Be sure to have some saucers underneath the pots so that they don't flood your garage when you water them. All right. Now, don't be surprised if on some of those plants you see them break dormancy sometime end of January, February, early March. I typically see my fig trees put out some new growth in February. And the reason is they sense through the small, tiny windows on my garage door that the days are getting longer. And they respond to that with new growth. They will even, my brown turkey, this picture was taken in February in my garage when my brown turkey broke dormancy, started creating leaves, and started making a first crop of figs. Again, don't worry about that. Let them do what they're going to do, all right? You have no control over it anyway, so why stress about it? But you might find that if a plant is breaking dormancy in your garage or in your basement, it might need watering a little more often. So just pay attention to that. Here is an overachiever hydrangea in my garage right now that it has totally started breaking dormancy, probably because we've had a very warm December and early January. I don't care. I let it do what it does. When I pull my car into the garage in the late afternoon, it actually gets a little sunlight on it. And here's a very interesting fun fact about plants, is that when sunlight hits a leaf, you know how long it takes for that plant to start to photosynthesize? 6 seconds. 6 seconds, yes. So, you know, if it's kind of a mild day out, I might leave that garage door open for 5 or 10 minutes and let that plant photosynthesize for a little while and make some energy. And then I close my garage door because I don't want my garage door open for long in the winter, even if the temperature is in the upper 30s or 40s, okay? So know that about your plants, is that if they're given a little bit of a chance to photosynthesize, they will do it. Now, later on, if you have your plants in a garage, like I do here, and they've started to break dormancy in April, one thing that you can do, since you might not be pulling, or your husband might not be pulling his car in the garage anymore. This is my husband's side of the garage. What you can do is pull those plants close to the garage door on a mild day, open the door, leave it open for an hour, and mid or later day, the plants can photosynthesize and start to build up some energy. We've got figs here, we've got some carex grasses here, we've got hydrangeas, right? And they get a little bit of light so that then in May, once I pull them out for good, they are a little bit adjusted to the real world, to real sunlight. I don't, however, pull these right out into direct full sun. I will put all of these plants into part shade or under my grape arbor in May, let them get acclimated, and then put them where they're going to grow. So let's talk a quick minute about houseplants, because houseplants at this time of year, a couple things you want to think about is, first of all your houseplants have turned toward the window. This is my lemon lime philodendron, and it is totally turned toward the light, right? You should be rotating your houseplants either a quarter or 180 degrees frequently. And I usually do it when I water, and I will water them maybe once a week or so, and I will turn those plants. So think about that. Second plant that you want to think about are your amaryllis that are growing right now. If you have an amaryllis like this that's getting very tall, you should put a stake in that pot and take a ribbon and support that tall stem. Because as soon as this flower starts to open and get big and heavy, that is likely to fall over and break. So if you've got an amaryllis that the stems are getting more than, say, 18 inches tall, think about supporting that now, okay? I want to direct you to Hyannis Country Gardens blog this week, because I have put up a blog post about the pleasures, the joy of having plants with golden foliage. And there are so many now, and they just bring a ray of sunshine into our plant displays at this time of year. And there are particularly philodendrons that have golden foliage. And philodendrons are fabulous because they are easy. And if you buy a 4-inch pot, a small pot, and put it in a pot that's 6 or 8 inches in diameter, right, bigger, with some fresh potting soil, they grow really quickly once they're in those bigger pots. The other advantage of philodendrons is that they don't mind going dry in between watering. So busy people who are not maybe watering regularly, look for the philodendrons, because they will be perfectly fine if that soil goes dry in between watering. Now, before we get to our questions, I want to give you a little bit of inside information and talk about a fun project that you can do when it's really cold outside. First piece of insider information is some of the winter seasonal plants have hit the greenhouse at Hyannis Country Garden. And this is one of them that I love. This is the winter jasmine, and it is fragrant. They come in the winter. You don't have to really worry about saving them from year to year. If you want to save them, talk to me in a couple of months about how to keep it and bring it into flower again. But basically, this is a great plant for bringing fragrance into your house in January and February, and they only appear at this time of year, so it's a good seasonal celebration. And speaking of fragrance, these primroses have also started arriving, and these are fragrant. When you go into the greenhouse at Country Garden, pick up one of these plants and smell it. It is lovely. And these also are seasonal plants. They are not save them for your children house plants, but they are lift your heart at the coldest time of year plants. And finally, about those orchids, there is a river of phalaenopsis out on the patio right now at Hyannis Country Garden. And the insider information is they are $29.99 each, but they are buy one, get one free. So you buy one for $29.99 and you get another one for free. So you can have a purple and a yellow or a white and a white and purple splotched or whatever you want. And they are commonly called moth orchids. It's a Phalaenopsis festival right now. So go and check them out. And what I love about these plants is they bloom for such a long time. Because when you buy them, not only do you have these open flowers that stay there for a long time, but you have the buds that open up. Now, here's a hint for success for these plants, okay? Number one, don't water them too frequently. Get in the habit of feeling the top of the pots. These are usually grown in moss. They don't dry out frequently. And not only that, but they are in this decorative pot. When you water them, take them out of the decorative pot, water them, let them drain out, and then put them back in the decorative pot. Don't let them sit in water in the decorative pot because the roots will rot. So that's number one. Number two, after the flowers all finish, and that's going to be probably a couple of months, they bloom for a long time. After they finish, clip that stem off about right there, right? Just clip off the old stem. But as long as that stem is green, leave it, because oftentimes they will produce a new flowering stem like this one. See that one right there over on the right-hand side? That's a brand new flowering stem. And they will produce more of those if you are patient with them inside. Another piece of insider information, and you guys are the first ones to get this because this is brand new on our website. I am doing a series of what I call plant geek groups or plant geek gatherings at Hyannis Country Garden over a series of time. One is about houseplants, one is about seeds, one is about perennials for spring color, one is about annuals, and one is about perennials for summer color. And all of these plants are $25 a class, but you go home with a goodie bag. And in the goodie bag is a plant. There are handouts, there are surprises, and I'm going to have some good surprises for people in here. So you can read all about this now and register for anything that appeals to you by going to the events page at hyanniscountrygarden.com. And basically, this is a time for us to hang out and have a good time together. I'm going to be talking about 5 plants that you might want to know about in that particular subject matter of the day. I'm going to be talking about 5 things that are going on in nature right at that time to keep you up to speed about seasonal information for your benefit. And of course, we're going to walk around and look at some great plants and products, and you're going to go home with a bag with a plant and some other items in it. So we're going to end tonight before we get to the questions. Oh, we're in good time with some cold temperature fun. And here it is. All right. You can take assorted plastic cartons. We all have them. And of course, we don't have lids that match them because that's one of the laws of the universe, is that the lids vanish, or you have lids that don't fit any container. You know, I don't know. They go the way of the pens and the socks. They disappear. So take some random cartons that you have, fill them with a little bit of water, and poke whatever plants you have inside right now into that water, and run a string from carton to carton with about 6 inches in between the string. Push that string and the plants in. So here's that begonia. You know, here's some begonia leaves and flowers. Here's a geranium leaf and another houseplant leaf. Here's another tropical plant. And here are my cartons with this is all stuff from inside my house, right? And I put the threads through them. And then once it freezes, you hang it up and you have an ice mobile. You have an ice mobile on days like today that it's not above freezing, and they glitter in the sun. They brighten your mood as it's snowing out, right? You can hang them out a window or from a hook where you normally hang a hanging basket, and you can have fun with it. So, all right, that is my plant project that you can do even when it's really cold outside. Keep in touch with me. My email at Country Garden is clfornari@countrygarden.com. And now we're going to stop the share. We're going to stop share. And back in the river of beautiful Phalaenopsis. And we're going to take the questions from top to bottom. So let me go up to the top here. Ooh, I love hearing what you've all got in your glass. Okay. I've never had a Kalanchoe before. And now some people say Kalancho. I say Kalanchoe. What you should know about horticulture is that there are no wrong pronunciations, only wrong spellings. So don't worry about it. I've never had a Kalanchoe before. Is it okay? Dropping all its pink flowers. Should I do anything? Know that this is a cool weather blooming plant. And so clip off the pieces that are faded or dropping off. All right, that's number one. Number two, let it go a little bit dry in between waterings, but then water it well when you water it. Put a saucer underneath so that you can water it well when you water it. Number three, in February, you can give it a little fertilizer if you want. That's a good thing. Keep it in a cooler spot in your house if you have one. And it may come into bloom again, or you may need to wait, put it outside and let it grow over the summertime. And then once it starts to get cool in the fall, it will come into flower again. Know this about the Kalanchoe. If you love it and are willing to jump through hoops to bring it in flower again, that is fine. But it's also fine if you decide to say, it's been great. Thanks for coming. Bye. And put it in the compost. So that's my philosophy about Kalanchoe. I purchased a Popstar hydrangea in September and planted it in a container. And now it's in my garage. What do I do to keep it alive? I've got a Popstar in a pot. In fact, that one that I showed you that was leafing out might be a Popstar. I'd have to go back and look at that. In any case, right now you want to feel the soil on a weekly basis. And if it starts to feel dry, water it. But until it feels dry, leave it alone. And as I mentioned earlier in the program, if it starts to break dormancy, don't worry about it. And then as we get into April, move it toward the garage door so that you can periodically give it a little sunlight. Don't fertilize it at all this winter. Wait until it goes outside to fertilize it, all right? And then sometime in May, you can bring it out into dappled shade. And then at that point, you can fertilize it. What do I do with orchid roots that grow over the edge of the pot? Leave them alone. These are plants that grow in the crotches of trees in nature. So not only are those intended to grow out, they do photosynthesize somewhat. In nature, it's those roots that are holding them into trees. Now, if they are getting so long that they are annoying you, you can clip off the long ones. But if they are not so long that they are annoying you, leave them there. It's not a mistake. This is how the plant wants to grow, okay? And we people, we want to help out, right? But we need to learn to trust our plants that they are doing what they want to do. And in this case, they are doing that. Leave those roots to grow, leave them. They will turn a little bit green because they're going to photosynthesize a little bit, and it's fine. It's fine. My lime tree gave me 5 beautiful limes by September, October. It's now in the planter in the house. It's dropped leaves and doesn't look great. Yeah, a lot of thorns, few leaves, no flowers. What can I do? You can first of all, start to fertilize it, because citrus are the exception to not fertilizing houseplants in the winter. Citrus plants can use a little bit of citrus tone, and we commonly carry citrus tone at Country Garden, and you can put about a tablespoon of citrus tone over the surface of that plant every month, all right? Once a month, 12 months a year on a citrus plant. So that's number one. Number two, if it's still in the pot that you bought it in, you might want to transplant it into just one size up pot, okay? Number three, know that it's going to not have many leaves for a while. Don't worry about that. It's going to come back, all right? You keep it sort of evenly moist, not constantly wet, but not letting it totally dry in between watering. Keep it evenly moist, citrus tone once a month, and then put it outside again in mid-May when the temperatures get above 50 degrees outside. It's going to come back and it's going to be fine. And it might even put out new foliage for you in March. So just be aware of that. It might, as the days get longer, it might put out some new foliage. Do geraniums that are rooted out from cuttings retain their original color? That is a great question, Donna. Thank you for asking that. Because yes, they do. And in fact, that's why some plant companies do not start their plants from seed, but only grow their plants from cuttings so that the genetics will remain consistent from plant to plant. That's why proven winners plants are grown in pots, not 6-packs, because they are grown from cuttings, not from seeds. And that's why they're more expensive, because they're grown from cuttings, not seeds. But that's what makes them proven winners, because you know the genetics are the same. So yes, they should. Now, it is possible, as I showed you that picture of my pelargonium, my geranium there, that had reverted to a green, occasionally a plant will revert to a parent plant. Pretty rare with cuttings to do that. So you can be pretty well assured that if you had a red geranium, you will get a red geranium. If you had a coral one, you will get coral. So that's why people like to propagate things from cuttings, so they get the same thing. Can I use coffee grounds on my house plants? I wouldn't. I would put your coffee grounds in your compost, okay? Any use for baking soda or white vinegar? Yeah, salad dressing and cookies. The baking soda for your cookies and the vinegar for your salad dressing. The internet is filled with under the sink kitchen cupboard stuff. It appeals to people because it's quirky and because you've already got baking soda and white vinegar. It's not always good for plants. So I would say, you know, use that baking soda for your chocolate chip cookies and use the vinegar for your salad dressing. Does it help to put eggshells in plant water and coffee grinds? No, no, it does not. Again, this is Instagram woo-woo BS. And I gotta watch my mouth because I've got stronger words for some of those banana peel water stupid stuff that you see in social media. Don't fall for it. Put those things in your compost pile. Or if you don't want to have a compost pile, go out and dig a little hole once the soil is thawed and put them right in your garden outside. Don't soak them in water. Don't, you know, the amount of nutrients you get from that is slim to none. And by the way, the amount of calcium that's in eggshells, it takes years, a couple of years for that to break down into a form that plants use. So no soaking them in water is going to make that available to plants. It's all, as I say, misinformation that you find online. Can you please discuss over watering mandevillas? Is it worth it, or will they be, I think you meant overwintering. Mandevillas, and will they be less productive? Here's the thing about mandevillas. They need to go through long days, June and July, right, before they come into flower. So the growers, in order to have them in bloom when you buy them in May, they have them under lights, giving them 14, 15 hours of daylight. and then they're in flower when you buy them in May. If you overwinter them, they're easy to keep alive. They're definitely easy to keep alive, but chances are they will not come into flower until August. So you have to decide, is it worth it to keep it over the winter knowing you're not going to get flowers until later in the summer once it's gone through those long days? Or would you rather have it in bloom in May and then have it bloom the rest of the summer? I personally decided that it's not worth it because I can find a gorgeous blooming mandevilla at the garden center of various sizes in May. So for me, it's not worth keeping it from year to year. But that's everybody's individual decision. But it's not that they are less productive, it's that they don't flower as early. That's all. Okay. Looking for advice on the little black gnat kind of bugs. All right, those are fungus gnats, okay? And fungus gnats breed in organic matter in the soil in your plants, and or whether it's your seedlings or your house plants, your amaryllis, whatever it is, that's where they're breeding. Here's tip number one. They love constantly moist soil. So let your plants, if you can, dry out a little bit in between waterings. That's tip number one for fungus gnats. Tip number two for fungus gnats is come into the garden center and get some yellow sticky cards. They're called white fly traps or yellow insect traps. They're just basically a card that's yellow and it's sticky like fly paper. And you put that near your plants. The adult fungus gnats, the ones that you constantly go like this and you can never get, right? The adults are attracted to the color yellow. They fly on that and they get stuck. Tip number three, you can kill them with a certain type of bacteria. And there are two ways to get that bacteria to kill the larvae that are in your soil, because that's where they're coming from, the soil. Number one, you can put Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew, which is the active ingredient in that is spinosad, which is a bacteria. You can put that in your watering can every time you water. So that will coat the organic matter in your pots with that spinosad, and that will kill the larvae as they eat it. Or number two, if you don't want to put that in your water every time, come into the garden center, buy mosquito dunks, which are another form of Bacillus thuringiensis that kill these fungus gnats. Crush the mosquito dunks with a wine bottle or a rolling pin and sprinkle that over the surface of your plants. And that will kill the larvae in your soil. All right, how many hours of grow light would you suggest per day for hydrangea cuttings? I would suggest probably 8 to 10 hours for hydrangea cuttings. That's going to be good for hydrangea cuttings. I overwinter in basement and use grow lamps. How many hours should they be on providing light? At least 8. It depends on what they are, what plants they are. If they are tropical plants, I probably have them on for 14 hours. You want them, give them a good long day with a grow lamp. Right. Bought some mandevillas for the winter first time. Now has some leaf growth. Should I fertilize? No, you should not be fertilizing the mandevillas right now. If they've got some long, sometimes they go through a vining period, and if they're getting leggy and long, let them do that now. All right. But then in about mid-March, early April, cut them back and then start to fertilize. Once again, if you want them to flower early in the summer, you need to have them under some serious grow lights that are on for at least 14, maybe even 15 hours a day. So do that. Let's see, when do the green giant arborvitaes usually arrive at Country Garden? Great question. Usually the nursery stock starts to roll in April, depending on the weather. Sometimes we have a really mild March and that starts to come in then. But April, start to look for those arborvitaes. What is the best way to propagate a scheffalera? To propagate a scheffalera, you want to cut off a tip piece that's about 6 to 8 inches tall. Then you want to cut off the lower leaves on that, just leaving the upper. You can do one of two things with the Cheffelair at that point. You can put it in a jar of water and change that water frequently until it grows roots. Or you can coat the bottom, including the places where you've clipped off the bottom leaves, with a rooting hormone powder and put it in that seed starting mix in a pot, and it will root there. So either of those methods do it. So, and I'm glad you like the Ice Mobile. And thank you for the compliment on the haircut. It's not only a good haircut, but he blow dries it at Salon Raphael, Nina. It will never look like this again until I go and have it blow dried again, because I refuse to do that to my hair just because I don't have time. Better to water orchids with gentle mist or ice cubes? I would either water it, forget misting. I would either water it with water in the pot or the ice cube method. And by the way, Cornell University did the research to see if ice cubes were harmful for orchids, and they found that they are not. So don't let anybody tell you that because ice cubes are cold, they're not good for these orchids that are behind me here. It's fine to use the 3 or 4 ice cube method. The main way that ice cubes are helpful is they are preventing overwatering those plants, because so many of our orchids now come in having been grown in sphagnum moss, not in orchid bark, and you don't want to overwater them. So if you are watering just with pouring water, take it out of a decorative pot, water that orchid, let it drain out the bottom for at least a couple of hours, right? Then put it back in the decorative pot, and you don't want to water it again until the top of that moss feels dry. And usually that's at least a week. Or you can use the 3 or 4 ice cubes per week, whatever your orchid has come with the advantage, with the instructions on. Okay, I've got a bunch of, and I just want you all to know that I'm probably not going to get to all the questions, but I'm going to save chat. In fact, I'm doing that right now. Click save chat. All right, I just clicked all the chat and saved it, and I will answer anything I didn't get to. I will answer in the Country Garden blog over the next couple of days. Cheryl said, I have a winter berry in outside pots for winter interest. Do I need to water it or just let nature do it? Right now, you need to let nature do it. All right. If we have 3 weeks of cold or just sunny weather with no rain, then water it. But if I would just let nature do it at this point, because chances are that it's probably frozen anyway. I would love to have you address the mandevilla question, trying to overwinter. I think I already did that, right? So Susan, hopefully you just heard me go over the mandevilla. If they're dropping leaves, no problem. If they are putting on weird, long, viney growth, no problem, okay? Because let them do what they're doing. Then in March, you want to cut them back and fertilize and put them outside, but they may not flower until August unless you've got them under a long period of light. So Maggie said you had citrus tone, good. I thought you only had to do it at certain times. Citrus are the one exception of an interior plant that can get fertilized once a month. And that's because they're often producing fruit and flowering at the same time. You know, they're on a more accelerated growth flowering fruit schedule than most other plants. So that's the, that's the way with citrus. Okay. And this, I think, is going to be our last question of the evening, but I am saving the chat once again so that I can answer the rest of them on the Country Garden blog, hyanniscountrygarden.com. Go to the resources tab and you'll see the blog. And early next week, I will have the answer to all the questions. Is the cutout pot often sold for orchids the best pot to have them in so that the air gets in all over as in nature? Great question, Julia. Thank you. And yes, once again, we have to remember that in nature, orchids grow in the crotches of trees. And so they are used to having it all hang out, right? And they are used to having air circulation. In the rainforest where they grow in the trees, it might rain every afternoon at 4 o'clock, but it all drains really quickly, right? So they're never in water. They're never surrounded by much wet stuff for long periods of time. And that's why orchid pots tend to have those slits in them so that they have the air and they dry out a little bit more quickly and they drain well. Well, it's 6 o'clock. It is time for dinner, and I am so glad you all joined me tonight. Keep in touch, clfornari@countrygarden.com. Come in and see us in the store. Check out our river of Phalaenopsis orchids, and I hope you have a green and growing winter indoors. Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.